Middle school teachers, what is the cringiest thing you've seen a student do? One of the kids responded to questions like Pikachu. Shame that a good kid is going to look back on those days with absolute horror. There was always this kid that would go up to guys, shake their hands and deeply sniff their necks. One day a teacher asked why he did this to guys and all he said was, "If I did it to girls it would be weird." I once confiscated what I first thought was a note being passed in class, but turned out to be a gay fanfic one of my students wrote, pairing two of her classmates. Kid wore clothes to school with the price tags sticking out. When asked why, I was informed that this was to let everyone know he was wearing new clothes. I just left middle school and I knew a group of kids who did shit like this. We live in a rural area and the kids had been there their whole lives, loved doing shit like this to prove that they were hood. I always laughed because I'm from the hood and anyone who did shit like that would promptly get mugged. One student wanted to ask me if I had a doppelganger. What he actually said was, "Do you have a dingleberry?" I also had a girl ask me what food stamps were, which isn't surprising because the district is very affluent. I explained, but she still seemed confused. So she asked what it means to blow a trucker for food stamps. Evidently she was reading a book meant for a more mature audience, and her worldly knowledge hadn't caught up to her reading level yet. My mom is a middle school English teacher. Once, a student snuck a bar of soap into her class, ate it, and proceeded to run out of the classroom and start vomiting. Apparently, he did it to impress his friends. I had a student who would constantly butt into people's conversations, and when they asked him to mind his own business he'd stand up and proclaim, "Nobody likes me. Everyone thinks I'm so annoying. Haha." And he'd laugh while everyone awkwardly stared at him. Another kid literally told me one time that he would just act annoying so that he could impress a certain group of boys. They were not impressed. There was a student who had his hands in his pants, moving his hand up and down almost to a rhythm. That was cringy. I just stared at him in the eye till he noticed that I knew. And then he stopped. Edit. Store became stared. I work for a private school. This middle schooler recently started dating another one. The girl decided to come to school in a black leather miniskirt and black leather tank top combo. At recess, which I watched because it's a small school, she was dancing all around in front of her boyfriend and hanging at the finale last stripper. It was hilarious and so cringy. I had a student from a conservative Muslim family wear white see-through sweatpants with a visible black thong on underneath. She brought the clothes to school and changed in the bathroom before class started. We had a student who started going to each class he passed, leaning in the door and yelling, "Mum's spaghetti," and moving on. I teach history and let my students do a PowerPoint presentation on the history on anything. Some kid did the history of furries. He came to class wearing his fursuit. I teach high school now. What grade did you give him? He got a 95/100 for creativity and expressive behavior. I caught the student on Google search attempting to look me up. He spelled my name wrong and my name is very common so I wasn't worried. I sent him home since it was an after-school homework club and then went through the rest of the history, which included boobs, naked women, Megan Fox nudes, and Megan Fox panties. One of the other students in the class kind of picked up on what was happening and mentioned that he has also been kicked out of the public library for similar reasons. Had a kid who legitimately believed he was a Sith, like from Star Wars. His helicopter mom would come flying down to the school crying religious discrimination if you told him otherwise. He would relax his throat and talk in a deep voice and say it was his real voice, but he disguised his voice to not scare his human brethren. On free dress days he'd wear an all denim outfit with high waisters and denim vest over a denim shirt. I had him for science so he'd blurt out things about alchemy from an anime he was into whenever we were working with a periodic table. He also had a girlfriend who lived in Mexico, who was also his cousin. Humankind cannot gain anything without first giving something in return. To obtain something of equal value must be lost. That is alchemy's first law of equivalent exchange. In those days, we really believed that to be the world's one and only truth. I was demonstrating convection, which included burning some newspaper. One kid piped up with, that smells like incest." He meant incense. They were too young to get it, but I nearly died trying not to laugh. I had a 6th grader lick a book. He definitely tried to keep it on the DL. So he looked around, made sure no one was looking in his direction, and then licked the book. It was a tongue poke, then a full-out lick up the spine of the book. I once offered a boy a My Little Pony color by number sheet, ran out of Super Mario. The boy's response, MR. "I'm not gay. I'm a lesbian. I like girls." I taught 4th grade last year, and I had a student who was 12 years old, middle school age. Held back a few years. She always did very odd things to try to impress her classmates, but they were relatively tame. Until there was a line in the bathroom and she took her pants off, squatted over the trash can and peed. 4 or 5 girls came running out of the bathroom and told on her. I had a kid carve his own name in his desk, but he couldn't figure out how we caught him. So what you're saying is that I should carve other kids' names into the desks. Former middle school teacher here. During state testing, I had a student who wet his pants, but didn't say anything. So he sat in a puddle of his own PSS for several hours. Now I'm self-consciously thinking of all the things I did that make me want to collapse in upon myself like a dying star. But see, this is comforting to me to see how common embarrassing shit is in middle schools. Makes me feel better about my own embarrassments. I will relay a short story that my 7th grade bio teacher told us. In that class we dissected a cow eyeball. The year before us, a student pocketed the lens of the eye. Looks like a yellowish hard thing about the size of a peanut M&M. In his next class he stood up and swallowed it in front of everyone. Another teacher told me about a student he had who would come to school in different costumes, ninja, soldier, etc., and stay in character the whole day. I do not remember the details, but there was an incident in which he threw throwing stars during a talent show. Just finished my first year of teaching middle school. I had one particular student who did not view me as an authority and refused to work in my class. This was especially concerning because this student was placed in an advanced class and chose to not learn purely because of who the teacher was. This also meant that the student's classmates were well-behaved, gifted students. One day, while the whole class was completing an assignment, this student was not working. When I addressed the issue, the student threw a fit and started crawling around on the floor, underneath the other students' desks. Now I don't know when you've last been in a middle school classroom, but the floor is absolutely filthy. This student thoroughly embarrassed themselves, as was evident by the looks received from the other students. The whole situation was extremely awkward for everyone, especially when the student realized that they would get no support from the other students. Not a student in particular, but a whole bunch of them. I was a substitute teacher for a few years on my university breaks, but last January was the worst middle school day I've ever had. 8th grade science class. I ask the kids to open their textbooks and work on the assignment. A girl shyly raises her hand and says, "Miss, there's something inappropriate in my book." Of course. Some kid drew a DCK. I calmly tell her to erase it and move on. 3 more kids say the same thing. I say, "If you have something inappropriate in your book, please just erase it." Every kid starts whining about how there's DCKS in their books, since they won't shut up about it. I take the offending books and replace them with different books from the back of the room. Every single book had a huge DCK drawn in it. All 90 something of them. Crudely drawn DCKS. Artistic DCKS. Squidward fricking SpongeBob. You name it. It was there. The kids rioted. I almost quit. It. I can't believe I got my first gold for this stupid tea. Thanks Yale. Not a teacher, but when I was in school those track pants with snaps down the side were popular. The boys would try to yank the pants off each other during class changes. And they all wore basketball shorts underneath. One day some guy thought it would be funny to rip off a girl's track pants. However, she didn't have shorts on. Bright purple undies on show, and the look of terror on that boy's face was hilarious. She just ran off and a friend followed with her pants. Oh god. So many of these at a chow of a Catholic school. 7th grade. Sweetest most innocent girl asked me what a G-spot is. I'm a guy. I said I didn't know. That's partially true. Walked in on a bunch of kids vaping in the bathroom while talking about how shitty whatever teacher their English teacher was. I had fun with that one. One of the students had to give a presentation on an interest of theirs, part of an essay, and she went on a long tangent about fencing and all the, I think, more well-liked children laughed at her. She left the room in tears and I felt so bad I just wanted to kill those kids. Little Korean kid stole vodka from his parents to seem cool and brought it into school in a water bottle. The kids drank it and ratted on him immediately. Sorry Kenny. And perhaps the best was when this emotionally disturbed kid, this was actually when I taught 5th, got pissed about something quite trivial and threw his desk in a show of retard strength, then ran out of the school and was asked to leave the following day. One of my mother's students took a whole pizza in the box out of her office and just started eating. When told to stop and put it back, he licked the rest of the pizza and asked if he could have it. She said no and told him to throw it away. He started arguing that it was better in his stomach than in the trash. My mom was furious. In 6th grade science class, our teacher asked if anyone knew what the arms of an octopus were called, and this kid immediately raised his hand and blurted out, "Testicles." Everyone was laughing, including the teacher, who also snorted. His face was so red. My friend and I got busted on day 1 of 8th grade social studies passing a crude drawing of a classmate without getting spit roasted by 2 large dickhead men wearing party hats. I didn't think the teacher looked at it until I got summoned to the office during next period. The principal unfolded the drawing and says to us, "Can you boys explain to me what this is?" I knew I was fricked. My friend reaches over the desk and grabs it, holds it close to his face like he's scrutinizing it, and says to the principal, "It looks like a picture of classmate having sex with 2 large men. And I think they're wearing party hats." I freaking lost it. My friend got expelled midway through that year for threatening to kill the principal during math class. Not a teacher, but I interned with one recently. Apart from the kid who insisted on being called Frisk, Undertale, I guess. But the craze had died down, so it was just weird. There was one girl who wore a cat ear headband. Kinda cute, since they were the metal silhouette type that kids wear. But she paired it with a freaking cat tail. A big, black and white, furry cat tail. This student spent an entire semester speaking in a Russian accent for an experiment. No one questioned him. First day back from winter break, he is back to talking normal. We were all incredibly confused, and his parents ended up going to the superintendent about our school allowing bullying. Kids pick their nose and usually eat what they pick while I'm teaching. I think they forget that I can see them while I'm at the front of the class talking. Not a teacher, but when I was in middle school I did all sorts of cringy shit. Asked my crush if I could use her shoulder as a pillow. Tried running with my arms in front of me in a cone. More aerodynamic. In gym. And more. Not me, but a teacher of mine. Also not middle school but high school. This teacher had been teaching for 30+ years. She was telling us that if we were ever bored we should read through the school's rule book. Because there were some wild rules listed that had to be written because kids do some wildly moronic things. She then proceeded to tell us about the one she had a hand in making. She left her classroom and came back to a kid taking a huge dump on his desk because he got upset. Apparently back then they couldn't do anything but detention because it wasn't written down as a school rule. And the kid's parents fought to keep the kid in because it was a pretty good school. The rule that resulted from this ordeal, as I remember it, read, students are not allowed to urinate or defecate on any property of the school. This includes, but is not limited to, desks. Just desks was listed IA. Not a teacher. But once, a kid took his shirt off, stood on a desk, and danced. And when the teacher tried to kick him out, he took his pants off and asked the teacher if she wanted the D. First off, I'm not a teacher. However, I had an interesting classmate in middle school. In the middle of English class during a test, the teacher gave out the loudest scream I have ever heard. Everyone looks over to see this kid with his DCK in his hand. He had started jerking off in the back of the class, and the first person to see was this poor old teacher. I had a classmate who had to give a presentation using PowerPoint. So there is a computer hooked up to a projector that is pointed at a screen that fills the wall. This guy sticks his USB with his presentation in the computer and it automatically loads the images he had on it in a gallery. He had a full folder of pictures of girls from his class he had downloaded from Facebook. That was kinda awkward. We had this one kid in our 8th grade class stick his entire hand in a cake that was being passed around for a party. Grab a chunk and started eating it like a Neanderthal. It was chocolate and his face was covered. When he finished his chunk of cake with everyone looking in disgust, he then proceeded to lick every finger. It was torture watching. He also ended up being the kid that threatened to blow up the school at the end of the year. I taught middle school in an East Asian country. For some reason, boys have a lot of built up Azula energy. Frequently saw groups of boys dry humping each other up to 4 deep. A lot of times they would just be chilling near the soccer field after lunch, sitting on each other's laps doing some subtle mini thrusts. I asked them what the hell they were doing once and they all got super defensive. Not a teacher. But when I was in grade 9, my grades weren't the best. On the day of the big graduation ceremony, they came and told me I didn't have enough credits to graduate. But they're passing me anyway because I just barely squeaked by. I thought, great. I made it. So I went along with my classmates to the ceremony. So there we were. A group of about 300 kids in rows and rows of chairs on one side of the gym. All the parents and families of the kids on the other side. They started calling up the kids one by one to receive their certificates. And once they were called up, they all stood on these bleachers at the back of the stage for a big photo at the end of the ceremony. So the rows and rows of chairs we were in slowly emptied out as the names were called, one by one. Then when they got to my row, my name wasn't called. The guys on each side of me got called, but not me. Finally, the very last kid was called up. And there I was still sitting there, all alone in the middle of this vast layout of empty chairs in the gym. People were staring, whispering, pointing, guess that kid didn't graduate. Must be a real dummy. I never felt lower in all my life. I wanted to run out of there, but I was too scared to draw even more attention to myself. So I just sat there. I still cringe to this day when I think about it. On the bright side, I was able to walk out of that hellacious school, with its abusive teachers and bullying students, for the very last time. Not a teacher. Sorry to be that person. In middle school, my friends and I were not in the popular crowd. But one of my friends had a huge crush on the most popular boy in school, who was also a major asshole. So one day, she brought him a bouquet of flowers and a heart-shaped box of chocolates. She brought the gift to him before school where he and his douchey friends hung out and asked him to be her boyfriend. I happened to be nearby and witnessed the whole thing. They laughed and laughed at her until she ran away crying. Despite riding the same bus as her. I never saw her again that school year. I saw her that summer since she lived nearby, and she told me she transferred schools because of the incident. Poor girl was brave enough to give it a shot. Just to be literally laughed out of the school. Not a teacher, but I had a classmate on a field trip rub mud all over his clothes and body so he could go home. Turns out his mom's car broke down and she couldn't pick him up. He had to wear his muddy clothes for the rest of the trip. I have had a 12-year-old student with a dirty face and hands lick his hands to figure out if the brown was chocolate pudding. It wasn't. To be fair. He regularly ate a pudding cup without a spoon, as kids tend to do. I did not eat lunch that day. I was a sub for middle schoolers in Florida and they beat and stole from another kid in my face and told me to frick off. Kids are animals. People are animals, to be fair. Not a teacher. But this one kid had a survival guide for middle school. Kept on talking like there was a camera in front of him. 2. Got another one. A girl masturbated in class using the edge of the seat. Not discreet either, as many of her peers had a WTF look on their faces. This girl was sweating hard. Seriously, most uncomfortable office meeting and parent conference.